We are back with another episode of App Stories, episode 239, sponsored this week by Things and Instabug. Federico Vitici, how have you been?
Hello, I'm back in Rome.
Nice.
And I'm back. Some people, I'm sorry, I apologize. A bunch of people have complained about sound quality for the past couple of episodes. You have to understand, I was recording in very precarious conditions.
Yes, you were.
With, not my usual setup. But hey, now I should sound as good as ever with my fancy, updated microphone and my proper USB interface. It's good to be at my desk. It's much more comfortable to record here, John.
Is it?
And
we're going to have to work on your setup at the beach. We're going to get you some more fancy equipment for the beach and maybe a better chair or what. I don't know what you need there to make it more comfortable. I'm not familiar with the beach house.
More like an extra room.
Oh, it's a little too crowded, huh?
It's cozy. We like to say that.
Okay, all right. I follow you. Well, today, Federico, I was thinking that we ought to talk a little bit about reminders and notes and app customization, because app customization is something you and I have talked about quite a bit in the recent past. And with iOS 15, iPadOS 15, and even macOS Monterey, we've got a whole bunch of customization stuff coming from Apple system apps, and in particular, reminders, which I just wrote about for our Summer OS preview series just a week ago or so. So that's fresh on my mind. I want to talk a little bit with you about that. The two big things there, we'll talk about notes too and how the two differ. But reminders, I think, really is the one that takes center stage because it's got two big new features, the tag browser and smart lists. Have you been using this at all, Federico?
Well, I've been using them to the extent that I have been testing the beta for my review. And so I am very familiar with them, but reminders and notes are not my main systems for note-taking and task management. This is one of the things that I have been thinking about a lot over the summer, because there's always for me that constant tension, right, between having more options, having more power user features in third-party apps, and wanting to check out the cool new modern features of Apple's own built-in apps. And believe me, this year more than ever, especially with notes and reminders, because I was so surprised by the addition of these power user features tagging, and especially in reminders, right? All the options that we're going to take a look at shortly for smart lists. I was not expecting that Apple would add those features. So I have been constantly sort of dipping in and out of those apps. I don't know, I really like my system in Todoist and Obsidian, but look at these fancy smart lists in reminders and the tag browser. So I have been tempted. That's what I'm going to say.
All right. Yeah, it's interesting because you're right. I mean, these are the kind of features that I really never saw Apple unlocking. I mean, and I think it is kind of a natural fit with an app like Reminders, though, because there's so much metadata that's associated with a task, things like dates and times and locations and priorities and all those sorts of things. And the headline feature here, I guess, though, that makes this particularly powerful is the tag browser, because you can have lists and reminders of tasks. You can have a work list, a personal list, a grocery list, a bunch of different lists. But with tags, it allows you to associate your own defined metadata with each one of those tasks. And it doesn't have to be limited to one bit. It can be multiple tags if you want. And then you can create lists, which we'll get to in a second, that cut across all of those existing manual lists that you have. And this is very much like what we've had for a long time on the Mac, I guess, with things like smart folders in the Finder and smart playlists in music. Those things have been there, but there's been this kind of strict, odd separation between Apple's mobile devices and the Mac in terms of what users were allowed to define in terms of smart playlists and other kinds of filtering systems. And that's why I guess I didn't really expect to see this ever. We did get with the reminders, though, I guess a hint, because it was, I think, 2 years ago that they added the tiles at the top of the app that have, like today, and
Yes.
scheduled. Although there's I think a total of 5 different options there, but they're not defined by the user. They're defined by Apple, and those are essentially smart lists for certain very specific categories of things, like things that are due today. And with what we got with the tag browser, we now have the ability to, people can create whatever they want. Like you and I, for instance, could have a writing tag, and we could have a task in like a Club Mac Stories list and another one in a Mac Stories list, and they could both be tagged writing, and then you could have a writing list that cuts across both of those other manual lists and brings all the writing work together in one place, which is really attractive, and it's something that you frankly find in a lot of more power user friendly task managers already from third parties.
Yeah, and really it's the flexibility that this system allows that is surprising to me, because I don't know, maybe it signals a different kind of Apple and the way that they think about like what's the role of a built-in app, that I want to talk at the end of this segment. But what's really remarkable, especially in reminders, we're going to take a look at notes shortly, but especially in reminders, all the different filtering criteria that you have for creating smart lists. You mentioned tags and the tag browser, and it's nice that you can just type in a hashtag, right? And on iOS and iPadOS, you have that suggestion in the quick type bar above the keyboard. If you have multiple tags already, the quick type bar suggests, all the tags that are matching the things that you're typing. So if you have, a tag for, say, video games, but also video, and you type the letter V, both of them are going to be suggested. So that's very nice. And then you can browse in the tag browser, you can mix and match, you can combine multiple tags. So for example, you can say, show me all the tasks in reminders that are matching, say, home and kids, right? So you can see reminders that have both tags applied. Obviously, you cannot, and you mentioned this in your story, you cannot do more precise filtering with more advanced operators, like show me tags that have either this tag or another one. You cannot go fancy with those exclusions, for example. But when you get into smart lists, you'll be surprised by the amount of options that you have. Two of them, I guess in particular, are really remarkable in my opinion. The first one, if you look into, so when you create a smart list, you can do so by adding a new list and then tapping, make into smart list.
Right.
There's a new button in the new list UI that allows you to turn any list into a smart one. And if you look in the other filters section, you will see date and time as the top level items there. Two things I want to point out. In the date field, you can tap and you can choose a relative range option. Relative range is really powerful because it lets you filter tasks by a relative amount of time. So things for example, you can say, show me tasks in the next, then you can choose a number. So you have 3 parameters, in the next or in the past. Then you can pick a number, and then you can say, how are they week, month, year? So for example, it's very easy to say, show me tasks that have the tag, video games in the next, and we're going to say 2 weeks. And that's done. That's a very complex filter that you just put together, combining a tag and a relative date range in reminders.
Yep.
And the second option I want to point out is in the time field.
Yeah, I like this
one.
In
the time filter, if you tap it, you will see, if you tap time, you will see there's any or off, but you will also find night, evening, afternoon, and morning. So you might think, how is that possible? There's like when you create a reminder, it doesn't show you like buttons for morning or evening, like say things by culture code, for example, right? Things, very, very popular. Task Manager offers a feature that lets you split up your tasks into morning and evening tasks. And that's very convenient. Reminders doesn't have that, but you can make a smart list that checks for those times. And essentially, reminders will know that if you add a reminder that has a due time, say between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m., that's going to be a morning task. if you create one that's, I don't remember the exact time thresholds, but basically morning, afternoon, evening, and night are associated with the default time threshold. And so depending on the due times, reminders and this smart list filter, they automatically assign a value to those tasks. So you can make for example, I made a smart list called night, and all of the tasks that I save for after 10 p.m., they end up in that list, right? So it's based on the due time, but it gives those tasks like a readable, name, like evening. Everybody understands what it means, which I think is a really fascinating option, because now you can sort of replicate the popular feature from things, and you can say, okay, morning tasks and night tasks, for example. And then obviously there's a bunch of other filters that you can choose from. There's location filters, there's priority filters, and there's the one that you really like, John, which I believe is the flag
yes,
filter.
I do like that one. Yeah, I really like both the relative time and the flag feature a lot. I think what's neat about relative time is a lot of things that I have to get done don't need to be done at a precise time. So having the ability to just create a list that says morning, afternoon, evening, or night, I can, by creating all four of those, you can break up your day. You can see exactly how many things you've scheduled for yourself for those different blocks of time and get a sense for whether you're trying to do too much, or maybe you have some free time where you should move something over. I mean, it's usually I will schedule things in that way, not so much because something has to be done by a particular hour, but because I know, for instance, if I have a big writing assignment that I'm working on, I really should do that in the morning when I'm fresh and feeling, energetic, and not try to do that right before dinner or something. So I like to be able to break my day up that way, and this is a great way to do it. And flag's one. I'm not a big fan of prioritizing tasks like 1, 2, or 3, or whatever the system happens to be, stars or whatever. Instead, if I have a really packed list of tasks, I sometimes, if I'm busy, like to go through and flag the ones that are most critical, and then create a smart list in order to see which those are, so they don't get lost among the things that would be nice to get done in a particular day, but can wait if I have to because I get sidetracked by something. So that's kind of what I call my short list. And I do that, especially like as we were leading up to the launch of the new Club Mac Stories stuff. I did that a lot because I would have these long lists of things to do, and not all of them had to be done on a particular day, but I had certain things that absolutely had to be done on a particular day. So I used that to kind of separate those kinds of tasks one from the other. And you can do that now really well with reminders.
Right. Yeah, that's a very cool use case. Something that, before we move to notes, something that I wish was possible in reminders, obviously, were, to have even more filters.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be interesting to have, for the future, filters that check whether, like a reminder has an attachment, for example, or if it's got a rich link attached. Or maybe you could check for keywords added to the note field.
Or even like a creation date, so you can see the things that you've been procrastinating the longest on.
Or even more interesting, I think, would be check for the creation type. One of the things, and by that I mean, one of the things that I wanted to do, and then I realized, oh, this is not possible. I figured, okay, I could use this system to make a smart list that aggregates all of the tasks that I quickly dictate from the Apple Watch.
Oh, okay.
Because and I want to do that because usually those reminders, they are dictated in a hurry and they don't have a lot of metadata attached.
No, just the basic information that you need, right?
Exactly. So I figured, but later when I'm on my iPhone or I'm in my iPad, I could make a smart list that shows me those reminders created from the Apple Watch. But that's not possible. There's no filter that shows you, reminders created on this specific platform. That's not supported. And then I figured, okay, maybe I could sort of fake my way around this by creating a tag for the watch and saving reminders by saying something like #watch. The problem is, maybe there's a way to do this, but I haven't figured out yet the syntax to have Siri accept a hashtag for a new reminder when I'm dictating.
Oh, interesting.
So if App Stories listeners have any tips for me on how to do this, please let me know, because I tried to say tag and hashtag. It just literally put that in the name of the reminder.
Could you create a default list just for the watch that it goes into automatically? I actually haven't used Siri with the Reminders app in a long time.
Yeah, but then I could do that, but I don't know. I just felt like it was fancier to do it with the tag,
yeah, no doubt,
you know?
no doubt. And then you could create a short. Well, I was going to say you could create a shortcut and find all the reminders with that tag, but I don't think Shortcut supports tagging, does it?
Yeah, that's another thing. The disconnect between the default apps and the shortcuts actions.
Yeah.
This is something that we mentioned before, that we would like to see a better integration there in terms of if Reminders is getting this new feature or if Notes is getting this new feature, the shortcut actions, they should match those new features, right?
Yep.
And there's still that disconnect.
This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Things, the delightful to-do app that helps you plan your day, manage your projects, and make real progress towards your goals. Today, I want to tell you about a fantastic new feature that's just been added to the app. Things now supports Markdown inside your notes. That's right, Markdown. Not just a small subset either. It's the real thing. Headings, bold, italics, highlights, code blocks, it's all there, you name it. All of the syntax is detected and rendered in beautiful style inside your to-dos and project notes. Now, you might be surprised to think of Markdown as a feature inside a to-do app. Here's the thing, though. That's just because in most to-do apps, the notes field is treated like a second-class citizen. Either it displays a super small font below the to-do, or it's tucked away deep inside the inspector pane. But that's not true with Things. In Things, your notes take center stage. When you open a to-do, you're given plenty of room to write. It's super easy to add any details you need to get a task done. Detailed plans, reference material, brainstorming, and a whole lot more. Of course, not every to-do needs long notes, but for the ones that do, it's great that you can now keep them right where you need them, inside Things. And thanks to Markdown, even your longest notes look and feel fantastic. So, if you haven't tried Things lately, you really should check it out. This is a great new version. Just search for Things on the App Store or go to their website, which is at thingsapp.com. You can download a free trial for your Mac and try the new Markdown feature for yourself. Of course, there are many other great features to love as well. Whatever it is you want to accomplish in life, Things can help you get there. Go to thingsapp.com to try it today. Again, that's thingsapp.com to give Things a try on all of Apple's platforms. Our thanks to Things for their support of the show.
Let's talk briefly about Notes, because Notes has some of the features from Reminders, but not all of them.
Yeah, this is a little surprising, and I guess maybe this is the result maybe of just different teams working on similar things at the same time, and maybe not having being privy to each other's information. I don't know. Who knows how that sort of thing works? But Notes does have tagging in a tag browser, so it's very similar in that sense to Reminders. However, it doesn't have the ability to filter on any data other than the tags. So they have what are called smart folders in Notes. And again, that lets you set up a folder based on whatever series of tags you want to use. And it's the same sort of logic applied in Reminders to Notes, in that you can have multiple tags, and that means it would collect any notes that had both of those tags. So there's no or not or that sort of syntax available. But you can apply multiple tags to notes and then find them again through a smart folders type of system. But you don't have date or time, or I don't know what else you might want in Notes, but you don't have other metadata available like date creation or anything like that. Right.
And again, I figured this could be possible, but then when I opened the Notes app, I realized it wasn't. I would like to check for I think ideally there are two things that I would like to do, maybe three. One, let me filter on specific sections of a note. So let me check for the note title. Let me filter by a heading contained in the note. Then I would just like to search for a keyword. Like, let me create a smart list that shows me all notes that contain the word John.
Right.
For example.
Saved search, basically.
Like a saved, because effectively this is like even
in
reminders.
Really
that's what they are, right? You're saving, you're putting together a search with a specific scope, and then you're saving it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just really semantics at this point. Smart list or saved search is basically the same thing. So let me search for a keyword and let me find it in my notes. And then I guess I would also like to see other sort of like top level filters, like show me notes with attachments, or show me notes that have drawings in them, or show me notes that have rich links, right? There's all these different types of content that you can add or create in notes. And I think they should also become filters. So right now, it's nice that you can create a smart list for tags. It's especially nice that in notes, the hashtags are something that you can mix and match in the body text of a note. So you can add your tags throughout, a document. It's even nicer that, I don't know how many people are going to take advantage of this, but hashtags are supported in notes even when you are handwriting. So if you're using the pencil and you want to tag one of your drawings, you can do that. And the system will recognize those tags. I guess it's not totally surprising because even last year, we saw support for data detectors in handwritten text.
Right.
So you could do things like manually handwrite a URL or an address, right? And the system would pick those up and it would make those clickable. So it's not totally surprising that it also works for tagging, but it's nice.
Yeah, that is nice. And another tag I could see being useful would be a filter based on quick notes, really, because they're really not.
Oh, yes.
They're not any different than regular notes, but they do tend to be your most recent notes, I think, by and large. And especially when you're using quick notes for things like research, that would be a good way to drill down and focus just on the things you're researching in a particular period of time. So I'd like to see that as well. Do you think this is a little afield from tagging and filters, but do you think the @ in notes are going to be very useful? I've kind of debated this. I've been meaning to talk to you about maybe we should be trying out shared notes again. We've been doing a little bit of sharing of notes for, your quick note editing collaboration system that you set up about a week or two ago, but we haven't, we used to share a lot of notes, and we've been using things like Craft in the meantime for that. We've kind of drifted away from notes, but I think the @ to me are a little bit of a sleeper feature, because one of the problems always with notes was if we had an existing note and I added something to it, it was sometimes hard for you to get notified of that. I mean, I know that it's part of notifications, but maybe you have those off, or you are on Do Not Disturb, or you just don't see it. And I think @ might help with that a little bit. Maybe not. Maybe it's just more of the same in that sense.
So I think the @ will make sense for shared notes that have a lot of participants.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like for students, right, or for people in a large
that
team,
makes sense. Yeah,
and they are sharing like with over 5 people, for example, it can be useful, I think, to be able to directly address someone else in a document, especially because the other person will get a notification on their device if they have the notification option enabled. I believe it's on by default in iOS 15. So it's useful to say, hey, we are in this large document. Hey, John, can you please look into this, right? But it makes sense, if it's just a document me and you are sharing, I'm just going to text you, right?
Right.
I'm just going to put a note in the document and you are going to see that because it's like the two of us. But I think they will be useful, but not for you and me and the kind of work that we have.
That's probably true. Well, I guess we just have to get a lot more people working with us, and then we can have these giant notes.
One way to look at it. Sure, that's a way to fix the problem. Yes.
Yeah, solve it that way. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Instabug. Building mobile apps presents some challenges. Bugs, crashes, and performance issues can be a nightmare for developers. But what if you could not only detect all of those issues, but understand the quality of your app from a user's point of view? Instabug's lightweight SDK grabs all of the insights you need to build quality apps through comprehensive bug and crash reports, performance monitoring, and real-time user feedback, all in a single SDK. With Instabug, you can continuously monitor and measure the performance of your app as perceived by your users, engage with your users by letting them report issues and questions right inside your app, get all of the information you need about bugs, crashes, and other issues, and fix those issues in record time, all with the focus on privacy and security. And you don't have to worry about the hassle of switching to a new tool. It only takes a minute to integrate Instabug into your app, and it fits right within your workflow with support for Jira, Slack, Trello, GitHub, Zendesk, or whatever else you use to handle issues. Join over 25,000 top mobile developers around the world who use Instabug to ship the highest quality apps. Go to try.instabug.com/app stories so they know you came from the show. Again, that URL to check out Instabug is try.instabug.com/app stories. Our thanks to Instabug for their support of the show.
So I wanted to ask you to wrap this up. Where do you think all of this is going in terms of Apple and these power user features that sort of seem to suggest a future for more functional customization on Apple platforms, which is something that we talked about a few episodes ago.
Right. And we talked about it then primarily in the context of third-party apps because I don't think either one of us really saw this coming right away from Apple. And I guess it's a couple of things. It makes sense to me. And I think we're going to see more of it ultimately because iOS and iPadOS are maturing platforms. And at the same time that they happen to be maturing, Apple is trying to align them more closely with macOS. And things like this, the sort of smart filtering features that we're seeing this year in reminders and notes, those have already been around for a very long time on the Mac. I mean, Mac users are gonna, are gonna kind of chuckle when they see that we're surprised and delighted that we now have them on our iPhones and iPads. But what it means, I think, for everybody, including people who work primarily on the Mac, is that now it's more of a seamless transition from one device to the other. And I think that is behind an awful lot of the changes we've been seeing in the last few years. Sometimes those changes are things to macOS to make them a little bit more iPad-like. Sometimes they're changes to the iPad or the iPhone to make them a little bit more Mac-like. It's not like they're necessarily one's turning into the other, but there's an alignment of features that are making it easier for users to move from one device to the other, because it really doesn't make any sense if Apple really wants people to buy all their hardware and just live in that, in the sweet Apple world. They need to make it easy for people to do that. And the way to make it easy for people to do that is to make them only have to learn one way to do things. Now, there are always going to be differences just because these are different form factors, and you're not going to, you're not going to always be able to do things exactly the same way on one device to another. But there is still an awful lot of functionality that can be close to the same when you move from one to the other. And I think things like smart lists are a power user feature that's been on the Mac for a long time, and especially since the iPad and the iPhone are maturing platforms themselves, it is time for this stuff to be not just available from third parties, as we've seen in a lot of our favorite apps, but also from Apple as well.
Yeah, I think that's right. I feel like we are going to see more of this feature, sort of, more versions and permutations of this feature. We're going to see that in music eventually. We're going to see that in files, but in mail, like I'm shocked that this is not in mail at this point, like a smart mailbox in mail. It's been on the Mac for ages now. I feel like there will have to be, once you open this sort of, Pandora box, and is it a Pandora box?
It
or
is.
Like
Yeah, it is. It's
it's a box,
Pandora's
right?
box, yes.
Had a box. It was a box.
Yep.
It was like it was not the Pandora package. It was
No, it was a
Pandora
box, yes.
Okay. Once you open that, anyway, you open up yourself to all kinds of feature requests, right? I mean, we talked about those right away on this show. Like in notes, I would like to see more filters. In reminders, I would like to see more filters. But as we discussed a few episodes ago, this is only natural for iOS and iPadOS. These are mature platforms at this point, and more functionality for power users is a natural evolution for the platform, because if you don't add those features a decade in, those users are going to look elsewhere at some point.
Right.
And so it's only natural for these platforms to start intuitive and easy and user-friendly. Not to say that they're not user-friendly anymore, but as the platform grows and as its users grow older and wiser and more knowledgeable, they also seek more advanced functionality, And so I think it's why we are starting to see this happen in Apple's own apps. And it's why I think we will continue to see it happen, because it's like you can only redesign things so often, You can redesign them, you can, change the UI, add new keyboard integrations, but at some point you have to address the power user market and the people wanting to use your apps even more, right?
Yep.
Ultimately, that's what it comes down to. Like there's people that say, I want to use reminders more. I want to use notes more. I want to do more things in those apps. And so at some point, you just got to give them those features. And this is what's happening and what I think will continue to happen.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it's interesting because it's a very careful balance that Apple has to strike here, because they do also have to be apps that work for everybody out of the box, even if they're not someone who needs that advanced functionality. And I think Reminders has done an absolutely fantastic job with that here. I think the design of the way the hashtags work is just so simple and easy. I mean, you can type your tag and you hit a comma or you hit space, and it just automatically drops that, hashtag symbol in there and changes the color, which gives you a little visual cue that you've created a tag. It's just got a lot of little nice touches in the way it's designed that makes it super simple to use. And I think especially if someone's approaching tagging for the very first time, I think Reminders is one of the best ways to get started, because it just makes it's not fiddly, which a lot of systems I've seen in the past are a little fiddly.
Yep.
All right, Federico, that's it for this week. We have App Stories Plus available now, and if you'd like to hear more of this show, that's the best way to do it. Today, we talked a little bit about e-readers and a system that Federico has set up. Of course, he's got a system for reading a book that we're doing with Club Mac Stories on our Discord there, where he's taking notes and highlighting and doing things like that, and he's got a whole system involved there. So if you'd like to check out App Stories Plus sometime, it is ad-free, delivered early on Sundays, has extra content, and it's also in high bitrate audio because it makes us sound really, really good. So go on over to appstories.plus to check out all the details and sign up if you'd like. I also want to thank our two sponsors for this episode, Things and Instabug. All right, Federico, everybody can find us, of course, over at macstories.net every single week, writing away. And they can find you on Twitter and Instagram, where you're at Viticci. That's VITICCI, and I'm at John Voorhees, JOHNVOORHWS. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.